every 20 minutes. It's your statewide Alabama weathercast.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Drew McCombs with the Alabama Weather Network, and this is your afternoon forecast update for the state of Alabama. And take a look at the satellite and radar. Clear skies, sunshine, warmth across most of the state. You got a few cloud streets in the northwest. You got some down towards the south as well, maybe a little bit more cloud cover right there immediately at the coast. Do have a few showers and developing there in southern Mississippi and southeastern Louisiana, but you can see across Alabama, nothing to speak of as far as rain, and that's kind of what we were expecting. We've got some dry air that's kind of pushed in a little bit, kind of reinforced from the east, and that's part of the reason you see such a lack of clouds across both Alabama and Georgia. Looking at our SkyCam tour, this is Hatton up in the northwest part of the state. It's up to 81 degrees there. The dew point is at 64, so still pretty dry. You can see you've got a little bit of a northeasterly component to the winds. Not too far away in Cherokee, it's 78 degrees. It's beautiful. You got blue skies there with a few clouds here and there. There's some of those cloud streets of cumulus clouds that you're seeing on the satellite earlier. East-southeast winds at 5 miles per hour. Now, interestingly, as you go down towards the southeast, you see the dew points are a little bit lower. Again, we've got some drier air being reinforced from the east. So the dew point's at 52 degrees in Bald Rock, which is further south, but also further east in those other locations we just talked about. And the temperature is only 71 degrees. Of course, you got a little bit of elevation going on with Bald Rock as well. And the same thing would go for Mount Cheaha. The temperature is at 71 degrees. Beautiful view here. Blue skies and not many clouds over Mount Cheaha at this point, with the dew point at 55 degrees. So again, that dry air mass still hanging in there, especially the eastern part of the state. Jefferson, blue skies here as well as we move further towards the southwest. And so just another beautiful warm day across the southern part of the state. And as we move down to the coast, Spanish Fort, it's 83 degrees. Again, not too bad as far as the humidity is concerned. Nice view there over the bay. And then as we move down to the beach, you can see that Gulf Shore is looking pretty nice. However, you can tell that the waves are definitely a little bit heavier today. You can see a good bit of wave action moving in here. And honestly, thinking I'm seeing a few rip currents here, right there, maybe another one up here. And there is a rip current statement in effect for this part of the coast and for most of the coastal area of Alabama and the western Florida Panhandle. So that's kind of what we were expecting to see there. So if you do happen to be out on the beach, definitely take it easy as far as the water's concerned. But as far as the temperature, it's 80 degrees and pretty nice out there. And then moving over to the west of Dauphin Island, it's a little bit calmer on Dauphin Island. You don't have quite as much surf as you have further to the east, where you're closer to a little low that is hanging around a stationary boundary in the Gulf, the eastern part of the Gulf. As far as coastal alerts, I mentioned there's a rip current statement in effect until Wednesday night across, again, most of basically all the Alabama Gulf Coast and the western Panhandle beaches. And so, again, just something to keep an eye on there. Small craft advisories as well. So if you happen to be getting out on a small boat, you want to take it easy because there's a good bit of swells out there, at least a little bit more than normal. 3 to 5 foot seas is what they're expecting. So what we're watching for the rest of today and this rest of this week, dry through the weekend, heat levels slowly rise, and we'll expect to be up into the 91 to 94 degree range for highs as we get into the weekend. Again, we'll have drier air than normal in place, so the heat index values won't feel as hot as it could if we had a little bit more humidity in place, which is always nice. As far as the temperatures right now, we've warmed well into the 80s in most spots. Although northeastern Alabama, it's only 79 to both Anniston and Gadsden. Same thing in Coleman, but we've reached 80 degrees in Clanton, 84 in Selma and Montgomery, and down further to the south, looks like we've gotten down to 86 or gotten up to 86 degrees in Andalusia. Again, the dew points kind of tell the story as far as what we were talking about. It's a little bit drier on the eastern side of the state, and the yellows here with the dew points in the 50s. A little bit more moisture started to creep back in places like Hamilton and Florence, and again, a little bit more down towards the southwest where you would expect. But eastern part of the state and even the southeastern part of the state, a good portion of it still relatively dry out there and not too humid. Forecast lows for tonight, we still expect to see some places in the upper 50s again in the northern part of the state. Places like Huntsville and Coleman get to 57, 58 degrees, and then down towards Auburn, 62 degrees. But again, some of these areas that are getting some of this drier air could still get down in the upper 50s, even down as far south as Troy, Eufaula, and Greenville. So again, that's going to be still a fairly cool morning starting off across a good portion of the state. Now, as we get into the afternoon tomorrow, similar day to today where we expect to get into the 80s across most of the state, maybe even a little bit warmer up in the north where we expect to get into the mid to upper 80s. Like I said, slow warming trend over the course of this week. So we do expect to kind of each day kind of tick things up a little bit, and we expect a few places down in the south will reach 90 for tomorrow. Here's your futurecast. Not much to talk about here, just clouds and just a few clouds and mostly sunshine over the next couple of days. Not expecting any real appreciable chance of a shower Could see a stray one around the coast closer to that stalled boundary, but really outside of that, should just be dry with occasional passing clouds here and just a very calm forecast. And as far as the temperature outlook is concerned, we expect as we get into, so this is looking at next week, that we're going to continue to warm up. And so we expect, especially the western part of the state, will be a little bit above average. And really the whole state in general should be a little bit above average for temperatures once we get into next week. And you see that warming trend looking at our 7-day forecast here. So we expect to get in the mid 80s ultimately this afternoon, upper 80s as we get to the next couple of days in the northern part of the state, and eventually into the 90s as we head towards the weekend, with the lows still pretty comfortable. I mean, we still expect to get into the upper 50s in many spots tonight and still in the low 60s through this period, even as we warm up in the afternoons. Because of that low humidity, it'll be hot in the afternoon, but it'll still be fairly comfortable at night. And then as we look at the southern part of the state, you can see that, again, just a very small chance of an isolated shower in one or two spots, but outside of that, it will be completely dry. And again, you see the warming trend as we head through to the weekend, and the lows not too bad for the southern part of the state as well. Well, that is your Alabama forecast update. We'll have another one coming up this evening on the Alabama Weather Network.